Particle therapy technology for safe treatment. The path from clinical requirements to technical implementation is filtered by the translation of the modality to the technology. For example, the word safe is defined in the context of the appli-cation. The appropriate interpretation of that context is essential. It's reasonable for there to be a deterministic flow from requirements to implementation in any application. For particle therapy, it helps to understand what clinical parameters affect the safety of a treatment, and then the filter is constructed when determining how the technology can affect those parameters. Unsafe scenarios are to be deduced or inferred and mitigated. This all begins as it ends by asking if you would feel comfortable having a family member receive treatment. Particle therapy is a multidisciplinary application that benefits from the insights of experts in these disciplines. It is the intention to weave many of the disciplines together to construct the framework for the application. This includes the context for the meanings and the relevance of the parameters as well as limits imposed by the physics and engineering. Well, in fact, it is difficult to be exhaustive in a book this size, so a sampling of this is offered, based on personal experience. The book builds with a discussion of some tools, an introduction to the application and the technology of the components that are needed. At almost every step the question, "What could go wrong?" is asked. The statement that the system must be safe is insufficient. A look into the clinical and technological considerations to achieve a realizable set of preconditions that has safety at its core could be a sufficient start. This may not be done explicitly in every section and for every subject, but it is hoped that there will be sufficient clarification for a safety filter to be internalized. Somewhat underlying the above is the approach of obtaining the necessary information about the application before considering how to create the technical components. The information necessary to learn about the applications to be presented can be acquired from many sources. The corollary to this is that many good sources exist and it is not the author's intent to reinvent the wheel. Yet, there are many assumptions in these different sources, so it is hoped that fewer assumptions are made herein. Some of the why is included with the what. If the reader finds the topics interesting and needs additional perspective, that information probably exists. The approach used is one that leads toward the identification of sensitivities and tolerances. The technology is interpreted while applying a filter that includes the clinical application and safety. Much of this filter has to do with considering what the tolerances are and what could go wrong. It is not intended to fully design a system or even identify all the final specifications, but it is hoped there is enough for many back-of-the-envelope estimates. It's probably best to get a new box of envelopes now. To accomplish this, it will be necessary to review some of the fundamental principles. It is assumed that the audience for this book could be from various multidisciplinary fields. The times that the author taught the medical applications of accelerators course at the U.S. Particle Accelerator School, the class usually included participants from both the medical and accelerator communities. A foundation is offered that includes the clinical application, physical principles related to the interaction of particles with matter, charged particle beam acceleration and transport, and even some engineering considerations. These are described at a level sufficient to build on in the text. Almost everything that is introduced is used, although it may not always be obvious. Some of it will be new for some and other topics will be review for others. Putting all this together in one place at a level to understand how these can be used together is the challenge. Much that is discussed in this book is placed in a context of safety, even if the word safety is not used on every page. The word safety is used several times in this introduction, to make up for that. Asking questions about how a parameter might affect a treatment and how a component might affect a parameter will help the reader to get what's intended from what's been written. In the end, the reader is rewarded with this. Sections entitled "What Could Go Wrong" are not meant to cause concern, but only to heighten the thought process. Part of the reason this book has been written after the author's 45+ years in these fields is the wish that a book like this existed when I started. I sincerely hope that you will find this contribution helpful and perhaps enjoy a few smiles along the journey.